Hi, welcome. Today I want to talk about the power of the heart, like its true purpose, what I believe it to be, and the concept of karma. So, in yoga philosophy, there's this concept called ahimsa, and it means nonviolence or non-harm. Now, when you think of that, or like put those words to that concept, we get this idea of zero, of nothing, of like no negativity, no harm. And I think that a lot of yogis have followed that path. And it creates a sort of like Buddha-like way of living. Now, for me personally, I don't want to participate with the world in that way. I want to participate with it quite a bit because I really feel like there's value to it. Like I want my existence to support the union of man and earth, I guess you could say. And while doing no harm would be awesome, there's not a lot of participation going on in that. And to be honest, like society chooses to participate. They enjoy participating. So the question then becomes, how can we participate with the world without causing so much harm? And I think the key here isn't necessarily to not cause harm, but to neutralize that harm after it's done with positivity. And so what that means is that, and not that we're going towards creating harm, but like destruction is a part of life, right? That death part, death and rebirth. And so destroying something, the process of destruction, and then that which is destroyed after, none of that is bad. None of that should stop existing. But there needs to be this rebirth experience, this intentionality behind what is after the destruction. Ooh, this is actually getting very complicated in words. Excuse me. So I believe something that we can do is to be very intentional about putting positivity into the world, about generating positivity. That's the best word I have for it right now. A positive effect on the world after generating a negative effect. So it's like we're sort of balancing out that negativity with intentional generation of positivity. Now, it's not like this concept doesn't exist. Like there's like charity and all these things that like make a positive influence on the world. But I think on an individual level, if we're all self-aware, well, in order for the heart chakra to do what it is meant to do, for us to embody the power of the heart chakra, we have to work with it on an individual basis first. Not to say don't do it on like a large basis, but like when we do it on an individual basis, it will become more concentrated and have a more positive effect. Or that's just at least how we get it to become more common, rather than just like the entities, businesses, whatever, that are causing harm to the world, then doing something to give back and generate positivity. Instead of just them participating in that, we as individuals can participate in that. And that is by doing this neutralization work. This is by using our heart chakras. Okay, so the way that this would look is that you want want to generate light. So, how do we generate light? From our heart chakras. We have to create love for ourselves, especially. And that is significantly harder immediately after creating harm, after generating a negative effect on the world. And so imagine that all of the heart work, the energy work that is rooted in cultivating self-love, self-acceptance. Imagine that all of that were to come immediately after, or very close after, creating negativity. You're going to be able to neutralize negativity way more often. So like, sorry, this is like very complicated and I'm baking it out in the moment. The negativity we feel stems from something. It doesn't matter what it stems from. It doesn't matter if we just did some shit or if there was some shit in our lineage that like we're now dealing with. The fact is that we feel that negativity, the awareness of negativity is simultaneously the opportunity to create positivity. Intentionally, for the purpose of neutralizing that. Now, like, that doesn't mean that people aren't creating positivity with no reason behind it, or like they're just doing it because they want to do it. Whatever. That doesn't matter. I'm talking about a specific process in which each individual becomes more responsible for what they're creating, their own karma. Okay? Like, at the end of the life, let's say that there is some calculation of like your net effect on the world. And so that might be negative, it might be zero, it might be positive. It might be positive in a really small way, it might be positive in a really big way. Let's say that that is the reflection of your karma. And that means it's that easy to clear your karma simply by working with your heart, energy, chakra, whatever, enough, illuminating yourself and the world, generating this positivity. Okay, so let's say like by the time that you're about to die, like you're not gonna do any more things, so you can like calculate that clearly and kind of like see where you end up. But what if you don't want to just like blindly walk through life? You don't want to blindly do life. You want to like intentionally work with your karma, the karma of the world. That's a beautiful thing to do. And so the only way to like quantify that in a way that you can tangibly work with is through this concept of generating a negative effect and a positive effect. Nothing that is generated is neutral. You might get to neutrality by generating enough positivity that it neutralizes the negativity. And that's enough. But you can also go past that into actually generating positive karma, generating a positive effect on yourself, on this world. And like, I don't know about you, that's what I want to do, right? When we say we want to make a difference, like it means that we want to influence the world in a positive way. And in order to have that kind of influence on the world in a way that actually sticks, in a way that is actually significant, it has to be overwhelmingly positive. Overwhelmingly because it needs to overtake, it needs to be greater than all the negativity. And again, just a reminder, negativity isn't bad. Like, it's a part of life. So it's just, how do we work with this? How do we balance this? And so, like, you do you, right? And however that comes out is however that comes out. And then you intentionally do the heart energy work to generate positivity. Okay, so let's go into that, the generation of positivity. Working with the heart means that the root of it, the core of it, the starting place of it is working with yourself. And so it's generating that self-love. I think a lot of people don't resonate with the concept of self-love because it sounds very like out there. It sounds very like not tangible, very abstract. But the thing is, think about like you doing something bad. Whether it's perceived as bad, whatever, but like you perceive it as bad. You're like, I just did something really bad. Maybe you like ran over an animal when you were driving, or driving is coming up a lot, like have a lot of road rage, like whatever it is. You did something and you were like, ooh, that was bad. Maybe you don't regret it, but still it was like, oh, that was like negative behavior that I put out into the world. A large amount of negativity. In that moment, can you find self-love? The significance of doing it in that moment is that it's harder to overcome that. Like, if you let that go weeks and then you're like, oh yeah, remember I did that, you kind of have detached from it already. And so to really interact with the true frequency of that experience, like, you'd have to dive really deep. Whereas like when you're working with it in the moment, it's still on the surface, it's still very present. Like, you're working with a very true reflection. And so if you're able to work with that and overcome that, that is like a huge, like, say that's like a -20, okay? And you're able to overcome that. Let's say you just get to like a 1, right? You generate enough like self-love and self-acceptance and like positivity that you get to a 1. Maybe you even take action on something, like you buy somebody their coffee behind you, right? So like now that work has influenced you in relationship with the external world. So you get into that positive space. Now, let's say that you're working with this energy after it has happened. It's a couple weeks after. We know that it's actually a -20, but maybe it's feeling like a -5 because it's not so intense of a feeling. And then if you work with that energy and you neutralize it, and let's say you even like do something positive in the world and you get to that positive side. Say you get to like a 2 somehow. You're only working with like 7 points. I don't know why this is the system that comes up. Instead of the 20 that it would have taken, right? So you're not actually working with the entirety of that energy. Some of it is not able to come to the surface when you work with it in the future. Make sense? So there's sort of this like checks and balances system happening. And the significance of that is like, we know checks and balances like in the government, whatever, that does that. But we need to have our own checks and balances system. We need to be responsible for ourselves. Aho. What do they do now? This is the cultivation of an individual sense of justice. And you work with this like independently. This is just you and you. You don't have to create a positive effect on the world, but you should at the least neutralize your negative effect. You should not harm this world. Your existence should not be a harm to this world. It doesn't have to be a positive to this world, but it should not be a harm to this world. So each individual should be, and is, that is why karma exists, each individual is responsible for the effect that they have had on this world. And then if you actually truly desire to make a difference in this world, then what you're saying is that you want to go beyond your individual self and your own karma, and you want to participate in alchemizing the collective karma. So you're like helping other people. Maybe not in a direct way. It doesn't have to be in a direct way, but whatever. Like, that's what it means. If you want to make a difference in this world, that's what you really want to do. But it's very easy to get lost in that concept of making a difference for the world. And then we can get into a huge thing about money, but I haven't quite dove into that yet, so I'm not going to do that right now, just like unconsciously. Let's go more into the heart chakra work, right, of generating positivity. I think that term, that phrase is important, generating positivity, because it requires internal work. Like, it's not easy to generate positivity. It's easier to be neutral, obviously, to not like dislike yourself. But that going from 0 to 1, going into positivity, that's a lot of freaking work. I don't think many people do that. And maybe they do that like on occasion, but to like have the skills to be able to do that, like to really shift from negative into positive, it's so much more potent than just neutralizing, right? Like, you can forgive. It's one thing to forgive yourself, but it's another thing to love yourself for that, despite that, through that. It's really beautiful and powerful work. And it really is as simple as saying that it is heart chakra work. This is I think when everybody talks about alchemy, this is what they're talking about. There's neutralization, right, which is going from negative to 0. And I think like processing the negativity will get you to that 0. But then it's another space entirely to go from processing and neutralizing into generating positivity. So it's quite a multi-dimensional experience. Because to generate like true love, like pure love energy, heart chakra energy, to source that from yourself, for it to not be there, and then you to take this like negativity, these materials, and turn it into love, like it takes tremendous creativity and imagination and concentration. So in that process of self-generating positivity, you're also developing these skills. So it's really not so easy, but like, again, just to get to 1, like forget 1,000, forget 20, forget 10, like just to get to 1 is such a huge win. It's beautiful work. Okay, I don't think I have anything more to say. I would love to hear your opinions on this, because I think it puts like the concept of energy work into a very tangible, relatable, understandable idea, vision. It allows people who aren't like self-identified as spiritual to still relate to the world in a very large way, in a very comprehensive way, in a very considerate way. And I think that that would just like have such a great benefit on the world. Because it's not that everybody needs to be spiritual. It's not that everybody like has to have this connection to their higher selves and the angels and like blah blah blah. Like, bro, nobody talks to me except for myself. I don't hear shit except for myself. And so you don't need all that. But in the process, you cultivate that inner voice that is like all loving, unconditional love, right? They talk about like divine energy, and that is unconditional love. Like, yes, some people like were born with it, that voice. Some people like had awakenings in which a channel to that voice happened, and some people didn't have any of that. It doesn't mean you can't have it. It does not mean it has to look a certain way. But it is awesome. It is special. You should totally go for it. Okay. Peace, love.